Welcome to my channel. I'm JC, cancer exercise specialist and clinical exercise physiologist. If you're new here, we talk about everything related to exercise, cancer, health, and fitness. So we actually have a study that we're going to go over. It's exercise and inflammation in female survivors of breast cancer. They talk about females because males can also get breast cancer as well. Very rarely, but it is possible. I have not read this review, by the way. I have not read the meta-analysis. I have not looked into other studies. I'm actually just going to do a breakdown of what they talk about here because this literally just got approved. So we see here July of 2025. So this is a brand new study. It's pretty exciting. Uh, Great authors here. So I don't know all of them, but I do know a couple of them, and there are some good authors. So Francesco, I'm gonna destroy this man's name. I feel so bad. Bettariga. So he's Italian. I believe he's Italian. Up and coming researcher, so pretty good. Robert Newton, well known in the field of exercise oncology, and Daniel, I would say pretty well known as well. So you got two big researchers here, and then he has about 20 studies or so. Pretty good research actually. So just from the jump, we got some good research here. He's Italian, and I believe he's actually working under Dr. Newton in Australia. So if you don't know anything about the research world and the research field, some of the best oncology research, exercise oncology research, actually comes from Australia. I would say they're more advanced than the US in some regards. Okay. I got a little bit of protein shake here. I did my 2 mile run this morning and got a little bit of protein and some oats. So you're gonna see me sipping on that throughout the time. Okay. Now, first thing I do when looking at it is check who the authors are, check the year, and then let's go ahead and dive into it. I do read the abstract just to get a little bit of overview, but then I dive into the study. So what I'll do is I'll read and then we'll break it down as we go. I do like to highlight in different colors, so just bear with my anxiety. Just highlighting. Okay, so inflammation plays a key role in breast cancer recurrence and mortality by promoting tumor progression. Exercise significantly reduces pro-inflammatory markers such as IL-6, TNF alpha, and CRP, potentially reducing mortality risk. However, it is yet to be determined whether exercise-induced changes in body composition can modulate inflammatory markers responses in breast cancer setting. So basically, it's saying that if you changed your body composition, so either you built muscle or you lost fat, um, does that help with reducing inflammation? Okay. So this is a secondary analysis based on the findings from our previous published systematic review with meta-analysis. Okay. So they grabbed a bunch of different studies, put them together, and they did an analysis of it. So they analyzed the data, and then essentially it's the second time they're doing that. So randomized control trials examining the effect of exercise. So they looked at a bunch of different inflammatory markers. Okay, and then they looked at lean body mass, fat mass, body weight, and BMI. So IL, all these ILs are just inflammatory markers. So basically, it's how we measure inflammation in the body. Just because you have an IL-6 doesn't mean that it's necessarily bad. Sometimes ILs, like these inflammatory markers, can be good. So we see them with exercise. Like exercise actually reduces inflammation. So exercise actually increases IL-6, but then you also have a anti-inflammatory response towards them. So in this case, it's actually inflammatory markers caused by the cancer. point what I'm saying is the inflammatory marker is important to get the context of where the inflammation is coming from. Okay. 16 studies were included. Okay. So it looks like around 750 studies. That's pretty big. Okay, so it looks like you have with increases in muscle mass, you had reductions in IL-6, which is an inflammatory marker, and that's a p-value of 0.03. So that means that they're 97% confident that exercise or increasing your lean body mass reduces IL-6 inflammation or inflammation. There's also a trend in IL-8, which is once again an inflammatory marker, and no significant, a non-significant, sorry, trend suggesting reductions in fat mass may be associated with IL-6. Okay. So the reason they're saying trend is because the p-values aren't really there. So in order for something to be significant in statistics, you want to have a p-value of 0.05. Now, 0.05 means that you're 95% confident that what you looked at caused that effect. So right here, basically you just get 100 and subtract 8, or 100 and subtract 6, essentially. 100 being you're 100% confident that these two factors are related. With a point value of 0.08, you're basically 92% confident that these two things are related. That was the difference between 92 and 95, I don't know. But point is, we look at 95% as the measure. Okay. So then we look at the conclusions. Now, be mindful that conclusions are a educated, opinionated piece. So it's basically the author of the study saying, this is how I interpret this information. So it's very important that you not only look at the results, look at how they did the study, and then take their conclusion as a guideline for how they view things. Because sometimes authors will get to this conclusion part and just like go off the rails and start saying some stuff that is not reflective in the data. I pointed out the authors because these are good authors that don't generally do that. You don't necessarily see those things happen. But sometimes you can get some really wild stuff, okay? So breast cancer is the most diagnosed leading cause of cancer-related death in women worldwide. Okay, so that's just a fact. Chronic inflammation plays a role in breast cancer development, progression, and recurrence. So constant inflammation increases your risk of breast cancer and increases your risk of developing what it would be like stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, and increasing your risk of another cancer. We're going to talk about what different things increase inflammation, but we'll keep going here. Okay. A persistent inflammatory state not only promotes tumor progression by inducing cell proliferation, so basically means that cells just continue to divide, um, meaning cancer cells, survival, and invasiveness. So it means that the cancer cells can attack or invade other organs and cells. So the a constant state of having inflammation actually increases the, I'm going to use the word aggressiveness loosely here, but the how strong maybe the cancer cells would be. Okay. given that cancer itself and the side effects of treatment can elevate levels of inflammatory markers, tumor necrosis factors, alpha, okay, and C reactive protein, survivors of breast cancer are increased risk of cancer progression, recurrence, and mortality. So, if you didn't know this, cancer therapies actually do increase your risk of cardiovascular disease, but they also increase your risk of second cancer because you are putting a toxin in your body. The toxin is to kill the cancer and help prolong your life, help you live longer, but with living longer also increases your risk later down the road of a second cancer. This is why lifestyle is so important. Something that I work with my online coaching clients is making sure that we have lifestyle factors that actually reduce those inflammatory markers. Exercise being one of them, sleep being another, and proper nutrition. Okay. Now, as a result, strategies are needed. Okay. This is exactly what I was just saying. So it says, as a result, strategies are needed to ameliorate inflammatory status, which may provide a less supportive environment for cancer progression. Basically, this study right here is saying that you need to have a lifestyle that reduces the inflammatory markers. This is not like anti-inflammatory lifestyle. It's just doing the actual habits that help promote um, anti-inflammatory effect and help support a supportive environment against cancer. Okay, leading to a lower risk of recurrence or mortality. Perfect. Once again, this is exactly what I do. Exercise is widely recognized as a key therapeutic strategy in breast cancer management. It is well known that exercise is safe, effective before, during, and after treatment, improving physical fitness, body composition. When they look at body composition, it's lean body mass, meaning your muscle, and fat mass. And fatigue while reducing recurrence, mortality, and mortality risk by 40%. So if you did not know this, exercise is extremely effective. It's safe, effective, and can reduce risk of death, but also recurrence by 40%. Now, those numbers can change a little bit depending on when you start exercising, which is why they have like the two little squigglies. I don't know what it's called. But essentially, the earlier you start exercising, the greater your reduction of a second cancer, the greater your reduction of death. The later, the less it becomes. So it can go as high up to like I think 60%, and I think as low as 20 or 30%. I don't remember off the top of my head on that second number, but on average around 40% reduction. Although more research is needed, it has been proposed that exercise may modulate inflammation, basically saying that it just like reduces it essentially. Um, this may be particularly due to skeletal muscle acting as an endocrine organ that releases anti-inflammatory cytokines at rest and in response to muscle contraction. All that that's saying is that basically when you exercise, you build muscle and you strengthen your muscles. And cytokines are just proteins that help your body tell kind of what to do, and it helps. How can I put it? It helps your body when you move. You basically send signals to your brains that tells your body, "Hey, we need to reduce inflammation. We we have this anti-inflammatory response when you move, aka exercise." And in this case, it's saying that it could be that if you have more muscle, these things could happen, which is what this study is looking at. Okay. So then it goes on to explain, for example, exercise-induced IL-6 stimulates the production of anti-inflammatory cytokines such as IL-10 and inhibits TNF alpha, a key driver in chronic inflammation linked to cancer. So TNF alpha is a um, inflammatory marker, right? Something, an inflammation in the body is just the name of it. And it's linked to higher levels of that in the body, increased risk of cancer and also cancer progressing. So when you exercise, it basically has an anti-inflammatory effect that reduces the inflammatory marker in this case, which would be the TNF-alpha. Further, myokines can improve insulin sensitivity, reduce adipose tissue inflammation, and enhance recruitment and activation of natural killer cells and cytotoxic T cells, which are critical for immune surveillance and tumor suppression. This is basically saying that when you exercise, so when you pump iron, when you go on a run, it increases your insulin sensitivity. So that means that you use less insulin to take um, more sugar out of your blood, and then it reduces how much your fat cells create inflammation in the body because fat cells have this inflammatory effect. And it also recruits and activates, so it gets more natural killer cells and cytotoxic T cells. So your T cells and your natural killer cells basically go throughout your body, find cancer, and kill it. So, or cancer cells, cancerous cells, and kill it. So it increases, the activity of these cancer-fighting cells in your body. Literally, that's what's happening. So, in addition, it appears that muscle mass levels may influence the magnitude and profile of cytokine release. So it seems like if how much muscle you have could influence um, this effect, this anti-inflammatory effect in your body. And if you have less muscle, then you may have less of an effect. We examine the effect of exercise on several inflammatory biomarkers in survivors with breast cancer. Okay. Okay, and then you can just kind of keep reading here what they did. Okay, so it was a combined weightlifting and cardio. And it's basically saying that it reduced levels of inflammatory markers. So this study right here, if I click on it, it's going to take me to the study and it's going to show me that when the participants in the study did weightlifting and cardio, they saw reduced levels of IL-6 and alpha, as well as the C-reactive protein, but they did not see reductions in these inflammatory markers. So that's important to know because you can have exercise being a powerful pill to reducing certain things, but not reducing other things. And we need to know though. We need to know that, right? Now, in the past 2 decades, the role of body composition in relation to mortality risk has gained substantial attention. Basically, we now know that if you have less muscle and you have more body fat, your risk of a second cancer, earlier death is a lot higher. So here it is. Low muscle mass and as well as increased adipose, basically fat cells, are a strong predictor of mortality risk in breast cancer. That is across the board. I would say almost every cancer. Now there's over 200 different types, so almost every of the most common cancers. Let's put it that way. However, to date, no studies have examined whether exercise-induced changes in body composition can modulate inflammatory biomarkers response in breast cancer settings. So basically, it's saying that if you have more muscle mass, does it actually decrease your ILs, your inflammation in the body? And these findings from mediation analysis may enhance our understanding of exercise, its effect, consequences, and impact on inflammatory wrestling. Okay, perfect. You always need to know what actually the purpose of the study is. The aim of the present exploratory secondary analysis was to investigate the role of exercise-induced changes in body composition inflammatory markers. Okay, in breast cancer. Wow, that was a mouthful. So it's looking at if you had changes in body composition. So it's not looking at exercise alone. It's looking at exercise that cause changes. You can exercise and not see increases in muscle mass. You can exercise and not see decreases in body fat. If you exercise and you cause a change in your body, does it affect your inflammation? That's what it's looking at. It's not looking at you did an exercise and then let's measure it. It's looking at changes in the body. Okay, so let's see. The present study is a follow-up. We know that already. Okay, females and procedures and taken. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so it's a randomized trial. Okay, let's get into here. Okay, a three-level mixed effect meta-analysis of the study included a random effect that was performed. Okay, this is basically talking about the statistics, different ways that they did the test. I'm not a stats guy. I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not a stats guy. I know enough to get me by on stats. So most of this I get, but I wouldn't be able to like explain it or um, really dive deep into the nuances of it. So uh, a lot of it is way over my head in some cases. Okay, so statistical significance was a p-value. So this is what I was saying earlier. This is where I can't get by. So statistical significance is a p-value of zero point zero 0.05. So if it's 0.05 or greater, this is basically in almost any study. Sometimes the author will kind of fudge this a little bit, but almost in any study, 0.05 or greater is called statistically significant. Okay, which is what we're looking for. Okay, so results. So basically, they did a bunch of stats to figure out the whether there was a cause and effect, right? Um, and how you run stats can affect, your study outcome. I'm not necessarily seeing too many or any red flags here, but I'm also not a stats guy, so I couldn't tell you whether they did anything wrong with the stats. But normally, that's not really something to look for too much. Okay, so let's go to the results. Okay, the number of studies retrieved, screened, and included from our search have been reported from the 22 articles, including a peer review, 16 met the inclusion criteria. I'm going to assume that they explained that this article right here is the original article because this is a secondary analysis. So that means that they probably have how or what their inclusion criteria is on the first article. Okay. Okay, so that's interesting. There was no studies found for IL-1 beta. In this regard, we performed the okay. So there was 752 survivors. Oh, so survivors. I said that wrong earlier. I thought it was the studies, but it's 752 survivors, breast cancer survivors. Mean age around 50. Um, BMI around 28. So we're looking at a population that would be overweight. They're not obese, but they would be overweight. Participated in the study. Characteristics of individual studies are reported in Supplementary Table 2. Participants included in the studies were diagnosed with breast cancers. So this is breast cancers 1 through 3. So stage 4 was excluded, it looks like. 4 exercise arms employed resistance training, 5 aerobic training, which means cardio, and 9 combined resistance and aerobic. So it looks like we have pretty broad range of exercises. I really hope that they spread them out and said like those who did resistance only did this or found this. Because if they combine all that data, I don't know that the aerobic arm saw many changes in muscle mass. And they have 5 of them, which is almost the same as this, but we'll see. With duration ranging from 8 to 52 weeks, so pretty broad range. 8 weeks is not enough to build muscle mass. You're gonna build very, 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 very little. You need probably 3 months, maybe 3 to 4 months. A good 6 months is probably the most optimal way to see the most muscle mass. 8 months is it's a little tough to. Sorry, 8 weeks is a little bit hard to see some significant muscle mass, but you can see it. You can see some muscle mass growth. It's just maybe not the most. You will see increases in strength though within 8 weeks. Frequency 1 to 6 days per week. The overall risk of bias was moderate, so a moderate risk of bias. Okay. There's a trend towards decreased BMI. Um, so honestly, it's not that much. It looks like they didn't really change weight, to be honest, with that BMI change and body weight. Okay. So it looks like there's a trend to losing weight, but not much, which is not uncommon. Most exercise studies don't show that you lose weight from exercise. In fact, I don't even know where that came from, but yeah, most studies don't show that you lose weight. So I'm not surprised to see that. In addition, there's a significant small increase in body mass. Okay. So, like I said, I was expecting to see a small change. Okay. In favor of the exercise group. So, a small increase in muscle mass would be between 0.25 to maybe 2 pounds. 2 pounds of muscle would be a pretty big increase in muscle mass. But I'm assuming 2 pounds of muscle mass increase in probably 6 months to give you some perspective. Okay. So we read that, but I want to look at the tables. Okay, so this is how they designed the studies, or not designed the studies, look at the studies. These are the number of studies I think that have that look at these different markers. Okay, and then before we get into that, I want to look at the table of people. Oh no, I always like to see who it is that we're looking at just to get an idea. But I guess, yeah, I guess they don't have that. Okay. Well, let's keep going. Association of body changes in composition and anthropometry. I can't even say that word. Basically, lean body mass and everything like that. Okay. So, trend towards decrease in activities was observed in favor of the exercise compared to control group. So decreases in oh, that's not even a p-value of 1 point or 0.13 is not significant. Remember, you want 0.05. So 0.13 is not significant. I wouldn't even consider that uh, something to look at. And the meta-regression, increase in lean body mass, were significantly associated with reductions. Estimate two. Okay. So this is significant. 0.03. So increases in lean body mass, excuse me, were associated with decreases in IL-6. We saw that already. Association between reduction in fat mass and reductions in IL-6 appears statistically significant. That's close. It gets close to 0.05, so it's not bad. You can assume that changes in body fat are going to reduce inflammation, while changes in BMI and weight did not mediate changes in IL-6. Here's why BMI and body weight did not change IL-6. Let's see if I can find table two. Okay. So, oh yeah, so here it is. So IL-6, let me see here. Okay, so anything with this little asterisk was significant. Okay. So BMI did not change IL-6. I would assume, and I wish it had it on here. Maybe it does, and I just have a hard time seeing it. Let's see. IL-6, I don't know that they saw enough changes in BMI or in body weight to see any significance in inflammatory markers. So to drop I'm going to use the word number in measurement in BMI, you have to lose a significant amount of weight. Like you probably have to lose 10 or 15 pounds. If I was to give a rough estimate, you'd probably have to lose 10 or 15 pounds to see a drop in BMI. And there's no exercise study losing 10, 15 pounds. Like that would be hard to see. Uh, it doesn't look like that. And same thing for body weight. You would have to lose a significant amount of body weight to get clinical significance. And clinical significance means you need to lose about 2%. So 2% of body weight, depending on the person, once again, is about 10 to 15 pounds. Now, you lose 10 to 15 pounds, uh, even if it's not your gold weight, you don't have abs at that, 10 to 15 pounds that you lost, it's still healthy for you. I do not think that they lost that much weight with these exercise studies. I would be very surprised if they did. Um, maybe it's here. Standardized mean difference. Yeah, they didn't show any differences here that are significant in terms of body weight changes. Okay. So yeah, that's why we don't see BMI being significant is because they would have to lose a lot of weight. They did not lose that much weight to impact their inflammatory markers. Now, for lean mass, there was a difference with lean mass, and there was a trend in fat mass. So with your body weight's tricky because body weight is your water weight, it's your muscle, it's your fat, it's your bones, it's your organs. So you can weigh the same exact amount. Let's say if you lost a pound of fat and you gained a pound of muscle, your weight would stay the same. Your body would look different and your health would be different, but your body weight would look the same. So yeah, changes in body weight weren't big enough. It looks like they did lose some fat, which is expected. Not a ton, but some fat is expected. Okay, sorry. Let's go back up. I just wanted to see that. And why that and explain why that is. Let's see. There was no significant changes in IL-8 between exercise and control, and the mitigations regression. The association between reductions in BMI and IL-6. Okay. Yeah, so body weight and fat mass did not show changes in IL-8. So all in all, what I'm taking from this study is that he says there's no significant changes in IL-6 between exercise and control group. In the meta regression, the association, which is showing, is there an association between two things? between reductions in BMI and reductions in IL-6, um, as well as increasing lean body mass and reduction in IL-6 or 8 approach statistical significance. So it's saying that reductions in the small reductions in BMI and the increases in lean body mass did show some changes in IL-8, which is a inflammatory marker, but changes in body fat did not. So, how in the world do we interpret this data? Basically, it's saying that certain things actually help reduce inflammation, certain things don't have an effect on everything to do with inflammation. So, inflammation is just one big word, but there's different, I don't want to say the word types, I want to say forms, maybe, or yeah, maybe different types of inflammation. And exercise doesn't hit all those inflammatory markers. Some of them are going to be changed by fat loss. Some of them are going to be changed by exercise. Some of them are going to be changed by muscle. So it's important to know that that's why you want to look at a holistic focus to help target as much inflammation as you can from your lifestyle. I would probably guess that if you did a study on sleep, it would target different inflammatory markers. If you did a study on walking, it would target different inflammatory markers. If you even looked at strength and training and cardio, you're going to see different inflammatory markers. So you want to do a little bit of everything in your lifestyle to improve overall. So with my online coaching clients, I make sure that their sleep is well, stress is reduced. They get an exercise program. They're eating well to target all these factors that help reduce the inflammation because one thing is not the answer for everything. Okay. All right. Wow, this chocolate milk here is taking me forever to eat. Okay. And then they basically say the different trends and different groups that they did see changes in markers. So this is interesting, right? So a trend towards a decrease in C-reactive protein was observed in the exercise group compared to the control group. In the meta-regression, there was no significant association between changes in body mass, body weight, lean body mass, or fat mass, and changes in C-reactive protein. So something that's important to learn is that exercise has two effects. The effect that you get immediately from doing the exercise and the effect that you get from long-term exercise changes within your body. So if you go, for example, running today, you're going to get some positive effects immediately in your body. That's going to last you anywhere between 4 to 6 hours, give or take, maybe 24, depending on what you're looking. If you don't do any exercise tomorrow, that effect is gone. Now, the repeated bouts of exercise throughout the week, which is why it's so important to be consistent, it's going to start creating long-term change in your body. For example, you can do exercise today. You can go lift weights today. You're not going to build muscle tomorrow. You're going to lift weights constantly to build muscle over time. So there's effects that happen immediately, and there's effects that happen over time. So this is saying that certain effects, such as body fat and lean muscle mass, did not affect C-reactive protein. But in some cases, that immediate bout of exercise does decrease the C-reactive protein. So even if you just exercise today and maybe you're not consistent for the next few weeks, you're still getting some benefits. Is that optimal? No, but it's still good to do and healthier than not doing anything. Okay. So let's look at the discussion, and this is where kind of the authors um, explain to us what they saw and how they interpret all this information. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not the best. But this is their kind of expert opinion piece. Now, just I think I prefaced it earlier. I did not read these studies, so sometimes I'll read the studies and then I'll make a comment, and I'm like, oh, look, the author says it. That means they're right. All right. In this exploratory mediation analysis, we investigated whether exercise induced changes in body composition and anthropometry mediated changes in inflammatory biomarkers in survivors of breast cancer. There were two important findings. First, increases in lean body mass was associated with specific changes in IL-6 and showed trend towards decreases in IL, while reductions in fat mass were associated with a trend towards reductions in IL-6 and TNF alpha. So, lean body mass is one thing, fat mass is another thing. They keep saying trend because I believe that these studies did not show enough fat mass reductions. I did not look at these studies, by the way. I can do a different search to look at, okay, how much fat did these studies actually lose? And then come up with a conclusion from there. I would assume, without looking at those studies, they probably didn't see enough fat reduction, which is why they saw a trend. Okay, second, so let me highlight this. Let's do a little color, a little blue color. Wait, let's do a color, just because this is some findings. Okay. Second, there was a trend and decrease in BMI to mediate changes in IL-6, or sorry, IL-8. These findings provide initial evidence to potential role of body composition in modulating inflammation in patients with breast cancer. However, given the most associations were not statistically significant, these results should be interpreted with caution. So this is how you know the author's good. This line right here. However, given that most associations were not statistically significant, these results should be interpreted with caution. That is a sign of somebody who understands the bigger picture and understands statistics and recognizes maybe limitations and understands that this study shows promise and a direction, but there's no definitive findings from it in certain cases. So it's important to make sure that we understand that while there were trends, it was not significant. So we can't say that fat loss, would decrease the inflammation and breast cancer survivors. It didn't show that. They could have said that though. They could have gone out and said that, and that wouldn't have necessarily been right, but they could have. But I'm glad that they didn't. Okay, so BMI was a general indicator of body anthropometry. So I kind of want to go back really quickly, sorry, to go all over the place. But essentially, it's important to know that lean body mass did decrease inflammation. That one is like for sure. Everything else was a trend, and we can't say for sure. So lean body mass did increase IL-6 inflammation, and that is something that we can say at least definitively from this study. All the other markers is kind of like up for grabs here. BMI as a general indicator of body has been associated with inflammatory response, although it did not distinguish between lean body mass and fat mass. So this is why I'm saying like it would be very hard. Like if you gain 1 pound of muscle and you lost 1 pound of fat, your BMI would essentially stay the same. The relationship between reductions in BMI and inflammatory markers may reflect that exercise-induced changes in body weight may impact the levels of some inflammatory markers. Similarly, we observed that reducing fat mass may attenuate the release of IL-6 and TNF alpha. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that if you lose fat, you're gonna reduce cancers, inflammatory markers. I am not saying that reductions in fat do not reduce inflammation. From the data that we see, and this is coming from somebody who has seen multiple studies and things like that, right? We know that increased fat mass increases your risk of breast cancer. We don't know whether the inverse is true. Well, don't know whether the inverse is true, right? Just because one thing is true doesn't mean the other one is true. But we actually do see studies where reductions in fat mass do decrease risk, of breast cancer recurrence, right? So it is fair to say that reductions in fat mass would decrease uh, markers of inflammation. I just think without looking at the studies that they actually looked at, because remember, they looked at multiple studies, just the findings from the studies. They didn't dive deeper into the studies. I believe that if I dove deeper into the studies, I would find that they did not lose enough body fat to get that clinical significance. That's what I believe. I did not look into the other studies, so I cannot definitively say that, but I feel pretty confident that if I did, I'm either going to be surprised that I'm wrong, not to say that I'm always right, but I'm either going to be wrong or I believe that I would be right to say that they didn't see that much body fat loss. Because I'm coming from an understanding that I know and I understand that exercise does not cause fat loss. However, if I was to look, for example, at a nutrition study where they change the calories, they change the amount of proteins, and we look at the effects of inflammatory markers, we would see a decrease. So because nutrition is really going to change the needle on body fat measures and and body weight measures mostly, more so than exercise. Oh, sorry, I got into a tangent. Um, while these associations did not reach statistical significance, they align with existing evidence linking adipose tissues to major sources of pro-inflammatory markers, which in turn contribute to persistent chronic inflammation. Basically, in a fancy way, they just said, even though that these studies didn't show that decrease in fat mass to reduce inflammation, this is not aligned with what we know about cancer and fat. We know that the more fat you have, the more inflammation you have. Essentially, what I was trying to say earlier. They just did a better job. This underlines the importance of targeting fat mass reductions in exercise programs or multi-model programs comprising of exercise, nutrition, and although basically, essentially what I just said, right? That it's important to target fat mass in exercise programs, which I said it doesn't really do that much, but you can, and focus on doing exercise and nutrition because nutrition is really what's going to help mostly with your body weight. Uh, although further research is needed to confirm these effects. So, yeah, you would need more research to show that, but in general, you see that exercise does this and nutrition, um, which is why I started oncology to help people get what they actually need from an exercise, nutrition perspective, healthy lifestyle, and well-being perspective. Because I believe that that's what's going to make the difference in cancer survivorship. So I truly, truly believe that because it's an all-encompassing lifestyle, not just one thing. Anyways, conversely, increases in lean body mass induce significant reductions in IL-6 and trend towards decreases in IL-8. The underlying reason may be due to role of skeletal muscle in secreting myokines, which have an anti-inflammatory effect. Indeed, myokines, okay, help regulate immune function, inhibiting pro-inflammatory such okay, using macrophage infiltration and adipose tissue and promote shift. Okay, so basically, it's just kind of describing how um, exercise helps impact your immune system to either decrease the effectiveness of cancer cell or kill more cancer cells or increase the effectiveness of your body to target cancer cells, which is kind of the three different ways to fight cancer. You either want to weaken the cell, you want to find more cells, and then you want to be able to kill more cells. Uh, anyways, furthermore, myokines can modulate systematic inflammation through pathways such as blah, 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 all which are involved in inflammation, metabolism, and immune response. These mechanisms may help explain the observation associated between increased muscle mass and reductions in circulating inflammatory markers. In your discussion, you're basically saying a hypothesis to why either what you found could be beneficial or why it is that you found what you found. And all that they're saying is just kind of explaining the pathways of how exercise does this. Okay. So they go again. Interesting, it should be noted that changes in IL-10 and CRP, so C-reactive protein, were not associated with body compositions. Although speculative, this may be relative to half-life of these biomarkers, the heterogeneity as biomarkers involved source of information, as well as to individual response to each marker to exercise, although more research is needed. So this is interesting. So basically, I guess you could say that it's kind of hard to get a good measurement on IL-10 and CRP. So the results could be skewed because maybe they were kind of hard to measure, let's put it that way. Um, and then as well as to individual responses to exercise markers. Okay. Taken together, findings from this analysis contribute to an understanding of how exercise programs may influence body's inflammation. Okay. Given a well-established association between body composition and mortality risk and survivors of breast cancer, basically what I was saying earlier, that we know that when you have better body composition, less body fat, more muscle, you have a better prognosis, which means a better outcome of your health, longer term living, better quality of life, etc. Excess body fat and low skeletal muscles are strong predictors of mortality. Basically, when you have low muscle and higher fats, you have higher risk of death and disease progression, basically. Highlighting the need for targeted interventions to promote favorable body changes, composition changes. From a clinical perspective, we highlight that we need tailored exercise prescriptions designed to reduce fat mass while enhancing lean body mass. So just so you know, this is exactly what I do. I focus on building an exercise program that helps increase your muscle mass and decrease body fat. Now, it's not a weight loss program. Most people either maintain the same weight or lose a couple pounds, but their body, their shirts, their pants feel different. And that is the measure of success. So when somebody joins my online coaching, right, I do a couple things. First thing we do is progress pictures, which means that there's a picture that they have to take to see the visual differences between where they build muscle and where they've lost fat. Because everyone's going to lose muscle. Sorry, everyone's going to build muscle and lose fat in different areas. But in order to make sure that you stay motivated and that you can actually see those changes, you need that picture. That's why we focus on the progress pictures. The second thing is making sure that it's individualized. They use the word targeted. I think they said tailored. Because what's going to work for you is not the same thing that works for everybody else. We actually know that if you give everyone the same training program, everyone's going to have different responses. Some people might actually even lose muscle. So it's important to get a targeted or an individualized exercise program, and in some cases, nutrition. So I don't necessarily focus on a fat loss approach. I focus on a muscle building. Let me rephrase that. I don't have a weight loss approach. I have a muscle building and fat loss approach, which is a little bit different than weight loss. Many online coaches and weight loss programs focus on weight loss. When you lose weight, you're going to lose muscle. I don't want you to lose muscle. You've already lost a ton of muscle through treatment. We want to preserve, maintain, and increase muscle mass. So I focus on a slow, steady approach of losing fat, building muscle. Yes, you can do the two things at once over the course of 6 to 12 months. And then we focus on the nutrition to support your exercise, but also help you maintain muscle and lose fat. So beyond this general recommendation, it seems important to assess muscle and fat mass in survivors of breast cancer, preferably dual, basically a DEXA, as it provides reliable measurements. Yeah, you could do a DEXA. I'm not going to have people do DEXAs. It's about 100 to 250 maybe to do a DEXA. It's it's beneficial, um, but you're going to see if you have enough practical ways to know whether you're gaining fat and losing, my goodness, to know whether you're gaining muscle and losing fat, you're going to get a pretty good overall measurement that you're not going to need to see a DEXA. Tailored exercise nutrition to address greater imbalances is a priority. For example, patient with high fat mass and adequate muscle mass requires emphasis on diet modifications and high volumes of aerobic training with some resistance training to prevent muscle decline with while driving fat loss. This is exactly, well, not exactly, but essentially what I was saying. So you need to have approach that focuses on you. So when I meet with somebody during the discovery call, I'm looking to see where is your health? Have you lost any weight? Have you gained any weight? Have you felt weaker in your legs? All these things let me know how much muscle you probably lost throughout the time. And that's what I'm looking for. Some people actually end up gaining weight after treatment, but you can gain fat and lose muscle at the same time. So that's why I'm asking a lot of different questions to make sure that I can give you a program, a specific individualized approach to you. Because, like it says, you need something that is going to be more targeted to you. They give a great example of somebody who has a lot of fat mass and decent muscle mass. So you want to prevent muscle loss. And like I said earlier, so, and I love that they said this, to prevent muscle loss decline while driving fat loss. Meaning, if you don't focus on building or maintaining muscle while you're in a calorie deficit to lose fat, you will lose muscle. So you are losing fat, but you're also losing muscle. Here's the reason why this is so important. It's very easy to lose fat. I can help you lose 5 pounds of fat, 10 pounds of fat, extremely easy. But I cannot help you get 10 pounds of muscle in about a month or so. That is very, very hard to do. It takes a long time to build muscle. So we want to preserve it as much as we can or increase it as much as we can. We don't want to lose it because even though losing fat is healthy, if you lose a lot of fat and you lose a lot of muscle, you're really killing your health. We actually see that it's not just about being skinny. You can be skinny with low muscle mass and still have a high risk of cardiovascular disease, high risk of diabetes, high risk of cancer. It's not just about being skinny. Muscle is very important for long-term health. And they give an example of, having a tailored approach to that. Um, and potential protein supplementation, right? So we talked about that. I'm having a little bit of protein today as well in my oats. Anyways, given the chronic inflammation contributes to breast cancer progression, recurrence, and mortality, strategies aimed to modulating inflammatory response should be a key focus in survivors of breast cancer. Thus, exercise-induced improvements in body composition show trends towards reductions in inflammation, which may have implications for lowering risk of disease progression or recurrence. So basically, as you see your body improve, you know that your risk of cancer is reducing. Uh, However, these findings were not consistently statistically significant, and underlying mechanisms remain to be fully elucidated. Therefore, elucidated, I think I said that right. Therefore, further research is warranted to confirm these potential changes. I make the claim that as your body gets stronger, builds more muscle, lose more fats, you're decreasing your risk of cancer because I'm extrapolating that, I'm getting that from other studies. Uh, but overall, I think this was a great study. They talk about limitations here. Um, I doubt they're going to say anything different, to be honest. From these studies, we highlight potential given clinical relevance of information in body groups, exercise, fat loss, while using new animals. Yeah, kind of saying the same thing here. Uh, yeah, you want to have a balance between losing fat and building muscle, essentially, to potentially reduce cancer progression and recurrence and mortality. They're just, honing in the point that you need to lose fat and build muscle to reduce risk of cancer progression and reoccurrence. All in all, quick update on the study. I thought it was a great study. I thought the authors did a great job explaining their findings. A lot of great information. My goal would be to then dive deeper into the studies that they look at to see how much fat did they lose, how much muscle did they lose. So that way I can tell you, hey, if you gain this much muscle and you lose this much fat, you probably decreased the inflammation in your body and you're getting healthier. So once again, I'm JC, cancer exercise specialist and clinical exercise physiologist here at Oncology. And if you like this, please let me know in the comments below. I will do more of it as long as you like it. Okay. So please let me know in the comments below. I also have a free workout guide in the description. And any questions you have about the study, about exercise, and how to get started, definitely let me know. Take care, everyone.